Hey guys, welcome back to this week's episode of the American Landman. Hey, I'm just getting my truck loaded up here because I'm heading out on a property pre-listing tour that looks really nice. It's 160 acres in Dunn County, Wisconsin, and if you're looking for a nice mix of land, wetland, timber, agriculture, an old farmstead, this is something you're going to want to take a look at. So I'll put my links to my social media below here, but follow me on Facebook and Instagram if you're not already, and hopefully you'll see us here in kind of a long version, but it's a property that I hope to bring to market soon. But today, I want to talk about the Managed Forest Law Program, MFL, in the state of Wisconsin. It's a management tax reduction program where they help you manage your land by a certified plan writer that will manage your land for logging. And this property was put into this probably about 25 years ago. Now, under this umbrella of MFL, there's basically two types of, within this program. There's the open program, meaning it's open to public use. And for that, you get a really deep discount in your taxes. Or there's the closed program, meaning no one can come on. It's closed to public use, and you still get a tax reduction, but it's not as deep. In the open program, the folks that put it in there might be maybe absentee owners, that they bought this as an investment. They just want to save on the taxes. They don't have a lot of emotional connection to it. Or maybe it's in an estate. And again, they don't have a lot of emotional connection to it. They don't use it themselves. They'll put it in the open program and get a really deep reduction in the taxes. In the closed, which is most common, no one can come on it. But you'll have a management plan. Usually they'll log it on the early phase, and maybe 5-10 years into the program, they'll log it. And then usually at the end, maybe 10-15 years later, they'll do one more cut in that 25-year program. It can be a great program. Sometimes they manage them well, and sometimes, in my opinion, not so well. Well, today I'm going to take you out on a property. It was my personal lease. I leased this property for 5 years, and it was in the MFL closed, and it was coming due for a logging episode. Well, they've logged this property, and I go back and I revisit it. And I didn't necessarily like what I see, and I thought this would be a great video if you yourself are considering MFL and maybe have a logger lined up to cut it. Just some things to think about in advance, and maybe ask your logger, is it going to look like this? MFL, logging blunders, you be the judge on today's episode of The American Landman. And today I'm on a property that I actually leased for bow hunting, and I went through a Managed Forest Law Program cut. And I came back, this was done 2 years ago, and if you've watched me for a little bit, I've actually talked about this for quite some time. The devastation that happens with an MFL cut, the regrowth that happens, and I'm here to kind of show you kind of the results of that and make a couple comments. So first off, I want to show you, so this is probably 10, 20 feet of growth. This is all basswood. The deer are coming in here and browsing it. All these woody tips are all nipped off, and this is actually great deer food, and this is the result of growing the regrowth, and this is probably 8-10 feet tall. As you look up, you can see why, because they opened up the sky here. At one point, this was an all heavy oak forest with no undergrowth, and they came in here and they cut it. Now, every guy that cuts, every logger, you're going to have to ask him, and talk to people, what does it look like when you're done? Because what happened was they came in here and they really devastated it. Now, they've left a good infrastructure in here, but there's all kinds of trash and everything all over it. And I thought, you could come in here and you could put these tops into food plots perhaps, but because there's so much junk in here, they got to clean it out. So I said that to the owner, and I said, you got to get them to clean it out. So they came in here with this thing. This is like a grubber. This attaches to probably a big backhoe, and they come in here and they start ripping up all the trash, all the buried stuff like this is buried in the roads, on the trails, and any openings. And this would stop anybody from really being able to make a food plot, because as you can see here, see all this trash that's in the ground? This was all underneath the dirt because it had been run over, and it's extremely hard to get in here like with a rototiller and clean it out and make a food plot. This is what they dug out. So now we got all these trash piles. Now, this isn't the end of the world. I mean, we could come in here, we could probably light this stuff and we could burn it off and make this better. But 2 years of effort in here, and this is what my friends got here. In my opinion, this is a terrible job. This should have been done way better. All this trash in here should have been removed. These roads should have been graded, and he's kind of an absentee owner. He's not really paying attention to it, and frankly, in my opinion, I might go out so far as saying that they're taking advantage of him. But the infrastructure on the positive side is this. This is a finger ridge that goes out. I could see planting some food plots in here and opening, getting some food up top, but you're gonna have to clean this up. You're gonna flatten it out. You're gonna have to till it. You're gonna have to work the soil. So if you're thinking about MFL, Managed Forest Law program, and you're gonna come in there and cut this timber, make sure you know what you're gonna get on the back end. Okay, here's an example of what you don't want to leave. Okay, you got all this trash. Now, this area here is exploding in woody browse. You can see a lot of aspen that's popping up there. This is all great woody browse. This is the primary food for the deer late in the season. It's thick, it's tall. And what they've done here is you can see they've punched holes in the sky. And because that sun's energy is now hitting the ground, it's exploding. But the problem is that they're leaving a lot of trash. So if this is your property and you're a buyer, maybe you're coming to purchase it and you're the seller trying to sell it, this is going to be a big distraction. They just need to do a much better job of grading these roads out. This is almost impossible. And this honestly is what I saw a couple years ago when they originally came in here. And so I'm going to be consulting with my friend about this, but I mean, look at these trenches. This is just ridiculous. It fills up with water, and this is just terrible. And here's the machine that's been doing all the work here, and you can see this area here is looking much better. So this is shaping up. Looks like they're not working today, but they got a blade on this machine here, and they are trying to smooth out and crown out this road that they made. And this is what they were skidding everything out back 2 years ago when they were cutting. Now, one of the comments that you're going to get from your forester when you do this is how much habitat is going to grow and how much woody browse you're going to get on your property after this cut. And he's right. This is what you get. This is what's called a shelterwood cut. You can see how they've taken out most of the trees. They leave maybe 10, 12 mature trees per acre. And there's an explosion of woody browse. I mean, an explosion. There's so much food and cover in here that it's almost unbelievable how much is here. And the problem is, could you get through this? It's impenetrable. Moving through here, a human moving through here to hunt this property is going to be very difficult. Yeah, it's great bedding, and there's probably a lot of deer in here because of it, and there's a ton of foods, and this is going to pull deer from everywhere. But to hunt it's really difficult. So your only option likely is to just stay up on top of the ridges, unless you can maybe find some openings down here where you could find these deer breaking out of the bushes and coming into some openings. Because honestly, there's not a lot of good trees. I mean, I'm in a section here that there's a few, but getting in here is going to be tough. You're definitely not doing it quiet, and trying to pattern these deer is going to be nearly impossible. Part of having these properties is the idea that you're eventually going to sell it. And there's always a separation between how the foresters look at it, the biologists, and then how myself, who's a land specialist and I'm here to sell it, look at it. And I'm going to make some distinctions here. I would agree with them that there's more woody browse than ever in this property, in decades and decades since it was young. In that sense, it's a plus. They definitely cleaned it out, and they created a lot of woody browse, and they created a lot of bedding. But in the process, they've taken all the good timber. There's no marketable timber, so the next guy is not going to be cutting this for decades, probably 20, 30 years before it'll need to be cleaned out, and maybe even longer than that. They've also come in here and they've kind of created a mess with these trails. And they're in here now and they're trying to clean them up. And while we have good infrastructure, the cleanup job is long, it's arduous. There's all these old stump skeletons. And from a sales perspective, this is not what people want to see. They're not interested in seeing all this stuff. There's just a lot of trash in here. And so it detracts from the buyer who maybe doesn't have any vision or any willingness to wait. Because we're kind of in an environment in America right now where everybody wants everything now. And so when they come in here and they see these rough edge roads and trash everywhere, even though I could tell them, look, this is all going to heal up. it just detracts from the sale. So my friend who owns this has considered selling it, but I told him, you know, honestly, it's about a 1-for-1 exchange. The money that you got from the cut, you lost on your sale. You really aren't ahead. The only way you're going to get ahead is you're going to have to come in here and you're going to have to clean this up. You're going to have to smooth this out. You're going to have to make it aesthetically pleasing, get some food plots in here, and then I, as a land specialist salesperson, can, you know, bring people out here and they'll see the vision. They'll see what this property can be, and that's what you're going to have to do. So he's got a little work to do in here. I mean, I still think it's huntable, but it's not that saleable. It's definitely going to hurt him on the market sale. Here's a suggestion I'd probably make him. See these skeletons, these old stump skeletons? Yeah, you got them off the road. They're no longer in here, so you can drive it. But if you could get a guy in here with a blade on a bulldozer, at least get these up over the ridge and get them out of sight. And that goes for all these stumps all the way through here. It just looks bad. They're going to break down, sure. They're going to be here for decades until they're grown over with vines, and maybe these edges will soften up and you won't see it. But if they could just get these 25, 30 yards over the top of this ridge, so much better. Okay, I'm sitting in a rut that's literally 3 feet deep, and you could tell this was wet, and they came in here and they brought their blade through here and it created more trenches. And what they're trying to do here is they're trying to clean this open and try to get the water to drain out of it. But this wasn't very well planned out because you can see right here it's really wet down in here, and they did dig a trench and they're trying to get this water to drain off of the ridge. And all this is going to do is probably create a new trench down here, a coulee, a drainage ditch. It's going to start taking your topsoil, and you're going to have issues through here all the time. So this is something you got to kind of think about before you start having these guys through here. Maybe what type of equipment they're using. I think something tracked would go through here with a little less aggressive tread marks, and then you're going to have to try to filter this water and get it off the road without allowing erosion to take over, because all it's going to do is get worse. You're always going to have a mud pit right here, and you're going to have a hard time getting through it with your like ATVs, and you know, even walking some places I hit, it's mush. There's just so much wet soil, and I had a hard time walking through it. So you got to consider drainage on your roads. It's really important. Okay, now compare that, what we just saw, to this here. This is an area that they didn't cut, and this is what all the forests look like. And if you get down to the deer's level down here, nose height, there's no food down here. There's nothing. There's no food. There's no cover. They're not going to stick around in here. At best, they're going to move through here in the nocturnal hours of the night. But this is the difference. This is the contrast. This is a closed canopy forest where the other place was all opened up with the shelter wood cut. All that sun's energy was hitting the ground, and that was an explosion of woody browse. So while that's kind of hard to look at, it's going to open up. Give it 10 years. That stuff will mature. It'll start choking itself out. But it's better than this. What I like to see on these cuts is I like to see kind of a mixture of it. I like to see thick areas like that. I like to see more open areas like this. This might be a good area to set up a stand because you could top access. And then down in there, it's more open. It's very thick. They're going to feel a little secluded, a little protected, if you will. But I'll still be able to shoot down there with a rifle. So that is the plus of an MFL plan. You get a little diversity, a little age class diversity, and some habitat types growing in your property. And that's what you want if you want a good hunting property. I want to make a comment about what you're seeing here. Notice that all these trees are very similar in size. They're all basically the same age class diversity, all very similar, 10 to 20 inches round. And what you're seeing is about 200 yards. What I would rather see is have them come in and thin these out a little bit, make little diversity pockets within the timber and get some thick growth going down there, which will create the funnels and pinch points that move these deer around. Right now, this is pretty open here. They're all the same age class, and the deer don't feel as comfortable moving through this area of the woods. I thought I'd make a comment on how I would hunt this property now. One thing about this property is it sets up really well. There's actually multiple points of access. The south west side and the northeast side has 2 points of access. there's a nice primary ridge, which is what I've been walking, that kind of runs down the middle of the property with cornfields on both sides or soybeans on opposite years, with multiple secondary ridges coming off of the primary ridge. And it lends itself really well in this state to rifle hunting or muzzleloader hunting. I'm sure there's some areas where I could bow hunt as well, but I tell you what, I would probably put some Banks blinds on this ridge, and I would come in from this side staying high, and I'd be shooting down into these valleys because there's multiple open areas that I could get probably a 100, 200 yard shot. These deer will be working out of those thickets and coming up to the ridges to maybe the water holes that I'd prepare, or maybe food plots. And of course they're eating the acorns. And then on the north side, I'd come in along the river, and I'd stay out in the crop fields, and I'd hopefully have some food plots up against the timber, and I'd lure those deer out of the timber down to those food plots, and that's how I'd hunt this. This is an extremely good rifle and muzzleloader hunting farm, an okay bow hunting farm, but getting in tight on them, you're going to be pushing them out of these thickets is my thoughts, at least until some of the stuff matures. Great rifle, okay bow, that's how I would hunt it. But this is kind of hard to look at because I kind of remember what this looked like before. But so guys, again, I'm not saying that you don't do MFL program because it can be good. And I'm not saying this isn't going to look good eventually, but you just kind of got to know what you're getting yourself into, because when you see this type of damage on your property, and maybe you remember it from what it looked like before, this could be a little shocking to you. So I hope that just gives you a glimpse into what the MFL plan looks like. And if you're going to do it yourself, make sure you kind of know what you're getting before you start. As always, guys, hey, thanks for watching. And if you're interested in this type of property and you want some more questions answered, give me a call. I'll try to point you in the right direction. And as always, I appreciate that you watched my vlog and checked in. I'm Neil Hogger, and I'm a land specialist for Whitetail Properties Real Estate, and you've been watching The American Landman.